Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. Although this episode we're not really talking about horror movies per se.
What happened to this concept?
We are reviewing a couple of very well-known sci-fi action films from the 1980s. Probably the quintessential 1980s sci-fi action films. The Terminator and Robocop. They put up a new trailer for the Robocop remake that's going to be coming out, which kind of, I think, sort of spurred the idea for this episode. And you actually had never seen the original... Either of them. And I've seen the original Terminator, but I never really sat down and watched Robocop from beginning to end. So as well-known and well-regarded as these movies are, we went into them sort of fresh, although we're familiar with the characters and concepts. But it was certainly the first time in a long time that I had seen the original Terminator as well. So that is the first of the two movies that we watched. I probably don't need to give too much of an in-depth summary of what the Terminator is about. It's, of course, a big vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Like a breakout movie.
Yeah, he plays the title character, a killer cyborg from the future, sent back to what was then the present day, 1987. Or it may be
84.
Yeah, it may be said 1984 for that one. Robocop was 1987. And so he's sent back into the present day to kill a seemingly normal waitress named Sarah Connor because she is destined to become the mother of John Connor, who will grow up to lead the human resistance against the robots who have taken over the world.
And she's kind of a leader too, right?
Yeah, she becomes kind of a important figure in the future revolution. So along with Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator character, a human character is sent back by John Connor to protect Sarah Connor from Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a really great idea for a movie, I think. It's a simple idea in some ways, even though it does involve time travel. But it's just a really great idea, and I think a very good movie that holds up very well and obviously led to a very lucrative franchise. So what did you think of this initial entry in the Terminator series, having seen it for the first time?
Well, I liked it a lot, but I mean, it's so well known and everything, that's probably why I never did see it.
Because you kind of feel like you don't have to.
Yeah, you kind of feel like you've seen it already. I don't know, I liked it a lot. I mean, it's hard to praise it since it's already been praised a million times, but it's a really fun action movie. And it's the only bad thing about it is I think it's really kind of dated. It's like the damn 80s just keep screaming at you, you know?
Yeah, although having watched Robocop after the Terminator, I feel like that feels like much more of an 80s movie than the Terminator
Maybe
does.
like in mood, but I mean like the characters and
the fashions
and stuff, which, I mean, they can't control, but it's still a little distracting.
It dates it a little bit. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, what could they have done about it, I guess?
Yeah. So that's true. But, I'm trying to think. There wasn't really anything I didn't like about the movie. It's kind of a perfect vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger because he's pretty much just
like one-liners.
Yeah,
sort of.
He's just a completely mindless killing machine. Like, he looks big and
what are you trying to say about Arnold?
Powerful. Well, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger is great, but I mean, it's kind of like the most distilled version of like an Arnold Schwarzenegger action hero. And I like that about this. You know, in the later Terminator movies, they play with that concept a little bit. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which was the first of the Terminator movies that I had seen, and I've seen that one many times. Great movie.
Yep.
You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is the good guy in that one, and there's a bit more nuance to his relationship with the teenage John Connor. But in this one, he really is a completely emotionless, mindless killing machine from beginning of the film to the end. But I like that. I like that it was a smart concept, but it was, in a way, a very simple story. Like, he is not going to stop until this woman is dead. It is this guy's job to protect this woman.
Yeah, you just need like one line and you got the whole story. He
Yeah.
will not stop until you're dead.
Yeah.
Like it's like an old western. It's
Yeah.
like it's you or me, you know.
And it's just
basically he basically says those lines to the main character.
Yeah.
He's like, it's either gonna be him or me, and then that's it. And from then on, it's just like straight ahead action and chases and which are all done really well, like the chase scenes.
Yep.
Finding them in the parking garage, and there's actually both of these movies have parking garage scenes.
Yeah, they do.
Along with robots, but there are a lot of like realistic chase scenes. Well, I mean they are realistic. There's no computer effects or anything like that.
Right.
And it's a lot of fun. I don't know.
Yeah, that's another thing I liked it, even though it was
Good chase movie.
Yeah, even though it was science fiction and you're dealing with a killer cyborg from the future, it wasn't over the top sci-fi. It really was more of like an action movie. They couldn't bring any weapons with them from the future, so they had to rely on, guns and things that existed in the present
that
day.
They could find or they can get their
vehicles that
hands
existed
on.
in the present day. So that kept the movie very grounded.
Mm-hmm.
There were some flash forwards to like the future timeline, this post-apocalyptic world that the characters came
Which
from.
looked good.
Looked fantastic, so you get some glimpses of that kind of larger science fiction world. But for the most part, this is a really just straightforward, very well done action movie. So you're particularly kind of like more of a fan of like action movies and action sequences than I am, and you thought that was pretty well done in this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not like. I like the chases because you can tell like. Now looking back on it, you can tell how it's done, but I think probably at the time it's probably pretty stunning. You can tell like they're doing models. It's not done that much back then. It was more of like green screen stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When the cars crash, they have a dummy inside of it. I mean, if you freeze frame it on like a Blu-ray or something, you could tell it's obviously a dummy. But if you're watching it really quickly happen, it's really kind of jarring. It's like, whoa, was that like a real person for like a split second?
Yep.
And they do that a lot in this movie, I noticed, and I think that's really cool. Like, they'll have chase scenes in the cars, they'll have like dummies inside of them. They'll use like little models, and that's the way they did this one. Which is kind of like a stark difference from T2.
Yes.
Came later, and it's all about computer special effects.
Yeah. It was one of the early films that really took good advantage of computer generated animation with the T-1000, liquid metal robot. I mean, that's a great film too. But there is something cool about the practical effects being so well done and holding up so well, even on Blu-ray when you can really look at it and see it closely. I mean, even like the sequence that we laughed at a little bit where, the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, removes his eye, and you can see his cyborg, robot eye underneath, and you could tell they'd done a whole
like a
fake
mold of his face
head essentially to make that sequence work. And we kind of laughed at it, but even afterwards you said like, well, it looked pretty good, for what it was.
Well,
and that's kind of true, that's kind of how I look at some of these old, kind of practical special effects. It's like, it doesn't have the realism of like, maybe really good CGI, but it's like, you can kind of respect the craft of it. It's kind of probably as good as they could have made it look,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, he looked like he had Botox when they showed it in close-up, and his face is just like frozen, and then there'd be like a hand that comes in and he does whatever to it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you look at the time, it wasn't even that long ago, I guess.
No.
I mean, it's just like 84, but at the time it's like, it's pretty amazing that they sort of were able to pass that off as a real person.
Yeah. And that's one of the few jarring moments in the movie. I mean, at the end, his human skin and flesh is burned off, and he's just the Terminator robot exoskeleton underneath, and that's done by stop motion. And you can see that it's stop motion, but I thought it looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked good. There's very little in this movie that throws you out of it in terms of the
I kind of think
special
it would have
effects.
looked better if it was more like puppetry that they used with it, don't you think? Maybe because
I feel like
whenever they're like standing in front of him, he's chasing after him, the color kind of changes like a little bit, and it's a little faded. You can tell it's like a different layer. Maybe if they had more They had that technology at the time.
Oh, sure. More like practical puppets. And I feel like they probably did more of that in T2 as well. I feel like from remembering what it looked like, they probably used more like practical puppets and things. But I don't know. I also just kind of like the look of stop motion animation. I mean, that's a technique you really don't see anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty much a dead art. As far as I can think. So when it shows up and it's done well, I appreciate it. I just kind of like the look of it. So yeah, I mean, The Terminator is a great movie. It's also
one in the Terminator 2.
Yeah, it's also a very serious movie. You know what I mean? It doesn't, unlike RoboCop.
It's not comic book.
It doesn't. It very easily could have, and you know, logic might even suggest it maybe should have, you know, because it was robots from the future. It's like, oh, if you don't make fun of this, the audience is going to, which is often true. But in this case, I think James Cameron was such an assured filmmaker and had such control over the look and tone of this movie that they really played it completely straight from beginning to end, and it worked.
Do you like the actors in it?
Well, as I said,
the main guy.
perfect vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I mean, I'm kind of making fun of him by saying that, but I mean, he's great as the Terminator. Sarah Connor, the woman who plays Sarah Connor, I liked her. I liked her in this movie because you kind of got to see that transformation from that we've talked about before in a lot of horror movies, the kind of typical final girl arc from like this, you know, sort of seemingly weak average person into a real survivor, and she plays that well. The main actor, the ostensible hero of this movie, I thought was fine. What did you think of him? You thought he had kind of an...
I couldn't tell really.
If he was
I want to say if he was really good. I kind of want to go in that direction. I couldn't quite tell. It's like he's either really good or he's really bad.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think there was like an in-between there. Because he's doing something kind of weird where it's really... He's almost doing kind of like his version of the Terminator where he's doing these really simple lines. And that's... I don't know if that was like...
Yeah.
I mean, it was in the dialogue, but the way he's saying it even is just like... It's almost like little kids running around playing like, we have got to get out of here. And like it's just like a chase movie from beginning to end. Like
he has a very
like they're playing cops and robbers or something.
Intense performance.
Yeah,
but he's an interesting character too because and you don't necessarily realize this at first, but he's a little off. You know, I think a very damaged character. He grew up in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. He fell in love with, Sarah Connor based on a picture of her.
That came out of nowhere.
It did, but I also think like it kind of showed that this character is not a fully developed human being in the way that he would have been had he grown up in a more normal environment. So I think the actor kind of...
He was a little off.
Yeah, but I think he kind of conveyed that a little bit. So
it was well cast.
Yeah, I think all around this is just a great movie. I mean, it's the Terminator, so it was a lot of fun to watch. So after we watched Terminator, we watched RoboCop.
In a robot mood.
Yep, it was all about like 1980s killer cyborgs.
Yes.
And RoboCop, while on the surface... in many ways is very similar in premise to the Terminator. In some ways, in tone, it was vastly different. A very different movie made a few years later. So, you know, again, everybody probably knows the story of RoboCop.
I don't know if people do.
Yeah, well, this police officer is basically killed or nearly killed in the line of duty, horrendously injured.
Kind of a near future.
Yeah, it's like a kind of heightened present day. Like it's
almost more like an alternate reality.
Yes, it is, and there's a satirical element to this movie too by Paul Verhoeven that I think plays into that kind of hyper reality. But it's not the far future of like flying cars and Jetsons. It's like a couple of years from now, whenever now is. So this officer is gunned down, killed or nearly killed. It's a little unclear, and he's either saved or resurrected.
Well, he's not dead, but I think like the catch was that he was declared. Like,
Yeah, he was declared dead.
He was declared dead.
But
so
he
they
was
could
in
do
bad
what they wanted.
shape. I mean,
He was
like his
messed
arm
up.
was blown off and all this kind of stuff. So there's this corporation who sold this Robocop program to the police and basically, took this guy, what was left of him, created this cyborg called Robocop. And the idea is that Robocop's memory will be wiped, so we won't have any of his human personality, any of his human memory. He'll just be a complete, tool, essentially, of the police department or
He's a product.
or of this corporation that made him. But of course, as the film goes along, his original personality starts to reassert itself, and he tries to get revenge on both the people who killed him and a crooked executive from the company who created him. And then, they've got to take out essentially their own creation. So there's a lot going on in this movie. It's incredibly violent, like absurdly violent. Unlike the Terminator, it does have that kind of satirical edge to it. It doesn't take itself quite as seriously, even though it's
It doesn't take itself seriously at
themes.
all.
Well, I think a little bit it does, though. I think it's tackling some serious themes, but it's mostly just like it's a more kind of fun, over the top movie than the Terminator. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, part of it is that I think like the human themes, where he's rediscovering who he is the most interesting part of this character.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's not a lot going on there.
Yeah. And that's what sets him apart from the Terminator, right? Like the Terminator is just a machine. He wears the skin of a human. It's like the reverse. Like Terminator wears the skin of a human, but inside he's pure machine.
Yeah,
RoboCop, on
like
the
Iron
surface is a machine, but inside there's this humanity that reasserts. So he's a more interesting character than the Terminator.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much to get more interesting than the Terminator, and he kind of proves that because he's sort of interesting. I mean, you can kind of see like how this could turn into a franchise, I suppose.
And it did.
And it did, of course. People know that, but the human stuff, the story of him, I found sort of interesting, but they don't do anything.
No, not very much.
He remembers that he has a wife and a kid, and it's thrown away in like one line of dialogue, like, "Oh, she moved on," and that was it. Mm-hmm. It's like, I know that maybe I haven't seen the other ones, neither have you. Like, maybe they explore those themes. I kind of doubt that they do, but I would have liked a little more of that and less of the camp.
Yeah, it was campy, for sure. I mean, how can it not be?
There's so much of it. I was pretty much on board with it when it was starting out, and it got rolling right away, where it's like, he's taken out by the cartoonish bad guy.
Yes.
Right away they turn him into RoboCop, and it's really cool how they introduce him, where you kind of get glimpses of him, and you kind of like people are looking over each other's shoulders trying to see, and you can see like the top of his head walking around. I thought that was really cool, a cool way to introduce a hero. And it's weird because he's kind of like stuck between being a police officer and a superhero.
Yeah,
so I always find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, this could have been,
because there are a lot of characters like that,
yeah.
But that made him, that added another little element that made him a little more interesting.
Yeah, we could have, added RoboCop into our Horror Heroes episode as kind of like another, kind of superhero type character, because he's
if you
much
count
more,
like the violence as horror.
Which in this movie I think is appropriate. This is just, I can't emphasize enough how violent this movie is, but it's so over the top. It's rarely horrifying. It's usually just like, oh my god, like.
And I liked it.
Yeah,
I thought it could have been like. You could probably compare it to like a Stuart Gordon movie. Both like tone and like the visuals of how graphic it can get.
Well, there was the one sequence during the end where the guy like falls into this barrel of toxic waste, which, I mean, this came out of nowhere, and he comes out of it and his skin is like melting. He
comes out like the Toxic Avenger,
mutant looking guy, and he's hit by a car and he just explodes as the car hits him.
The weird thing is, like, up to that point, all it had been is just people getting shot multiple times in the chest.
It was just completely
and then all of a sudden
nowhere.
This guy mutates into a monster and a car hits him and he explodes.
But
somehow it fit.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It was out of nowhere, but it was sort of in keeping with the over-the-top tone of this movie. Yeah. So,
also I think, like, we also kind of like remarked, like, it got progressively silly.
Yeah,
as
it
went
did.
along.
It got sillier and sillier as it went along in some ways.
Now, I like that part where they're introducing him. I know you were kind of saying, like, it's kind of annoying, like, the people... He's trapped in his hospital bed when they first make him.
Yeah, we haven't
he
seen
hasn't seen himself
RoboCop yet,
and the
but
audience
we
hasn't seen
see
him.
what he's seeing through his robo-vision as the doctors are kind of looking down on him. And
Yeah, and they're, like, goofing around, and
Yeah.
they're making fun of him and stuff.
I did find that sequence a little annoying.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it was inventive, and it's probably...
It's different.
Was more inventive.
It's not what you expect.
No, it's probably the kind of thing you'd seen less of when the movie first came out, as opposed to now.
And then... Okay, so I liked that, and I also liked the part where they're introducing how RoboCop is stopping all these criminals. They're little independent little scenes where there's the thugs in the alley trying to rape the person, and there's the mom and pop store that is being robbed. I liked all those independent little things.
Again, very very superhero-y. Like we see that in all the superhero.
It's like, and then they flash,
movies.
and it's like there's RoboCop, and there's a really cool little scene when he goes in. Remember the mayor is being held hostage in whatever it is, like City Hall, and they've got it all blocked off, and everybody's like, they're trying to basically like talk him down.
Yeah, this would have been the climax in any.
And there's
other
a really
movie,
funny scene where it's like, it's from above, like looking down at the front of City Hall, and there's like police tape, and RoboCop in his crappy little police car. Which is kind of weird.
He needed a better car.
He just kind of like rolls in and he snaps the police tape, and it just kind of like rolls to a stop in front of City Hall, and he just like walks in. Like I just thought that was funny. Like you almost, if you blink, you might even notice it. But it is just funny how it just kind of like he slowly rolls in and it just kind of snaps and floats away. Yeah. It's like that just sums it up. It's
lot of little touches of comedy like that in RoboCop.
In addition to the really goofy over-the-top stuff that doesn't work. I think there's probably more stuff that doesn't work. I think they added too much of that stuff.
What do you think didn't? What's some of the stuff that didn't work? Did you find?
Trying to develop him as a character, I suppose, which sounds kind of silly in a RoboCop movie, but you need like a little more of a story with him, I think, because they introduce.
Well, you thought to try and develop him as a character was like too much? Like they shouldn't have even introduced that? Or?
No, I thought they should have done something with it. I feel like they kind of introduced it and they didn't
go anywhere with it. Yeah,
it's like they didn't ignore it because they talked about like how he dreams sometimes, and that's what kind of snapped him back into reality. And apparently, he had a wife and a child.
Yeah.
But don't you think I kind of thought that was going somewhere?
Oh yeah, you figure you would kind of assume you would see them in the movie and all this kind of stuff.
Maybe he'd like be standing outside watching her and her new.
Yeah.
Family.
I mean, ultimately,
some cheesy thing like that. But it just kind of floats away.
Ultimately, what it comes down to is like this is like an action movie with a subplot about the character of RoboCop that touches on themes of identity, rather than a movie about themes of identity and humanity that has a little bit of action. I mean, the primary.
If it would have been balanced a little better.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
I guess that's my.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also. Well, what did you think of the cast in this movie? We talked about the cast in Terminator. What did you think about the cast in this movie, which is a real who's who of character actors?
I thought it was good.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good.
Didn't you think the villains in this movie though were a little obnoxious? I thought they were.
Well, they're annoying.
Yeah, they were very comic.
That's like saying I didn't like the villain in the movie. Like you're not supposed to like him, you know.
Well, no, but I guess I didn't like that the performances and the characters were so like cartoonishly evil. I guess I didn't enjoy that as much. It came off as a little grating to me. Like a lot of the henchmen and even.
Well, that was a problem with the story too. Is that all it is, like, if you listen to the dialogue, it's just, all it is just like, cocaine money, money, guns, cocaine money.
Right.
And I'm not even
villains
I'm not describing things. No. I'm saying what they were saying. They were.
Right.
That was just like in the dialogue.
They're just reveling in the evil and the excess of the future 80s. You know
like
what I mean?
RoboCop with a better, maybe just a better villain. I guess you're right. I mean, like. He needed a better villain than just a guy with a larger robot that he can control.
Yes.
And a bunch of henchmen who have nothing to do in the story.
Yeah, so I think the villains
except hang around
and be like
and act like henchmen. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's totally right.
You convinced me. You're right.
Yeah. Well, but
I was actually thinking more of like the the main, like, the protagonist, not the antagonist. Like, what's that guy's name? Peter Weller?
Yeah.
Right? I thought he was really good, despite being, like,
having
being robotic.
Robocop,
Yeah, I thought he was, like,
most
a really
of the
good
movie
choice.
you just see his...
He's kind of, I've said it with, like, female act, he's kind of atypical of what you... He's not like a... I mean, I'm not going to say he's ugly. He's not like a typical...
No, yeah, he's not your classic
guy.
kind of lantern.
He's not who you would
handsome.
think that someone would cast as Robocop. You know, like this giant...
Yeah.
Like this cyborg...
Yeah.
that goes around shooting people. Like,
yeah.
He's not who you would expect.
He's very good in the movie.
So I think maybe he could have been used, like, a little better.
For sure.
So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Because you could see, like, hints of that he's pretty good.
He would be capable of exploring some more nuance in that character.
Nuance in a Robocop.
As silly as it sounds,
Yes.
like nuance in a Robocop.
I agree.
Movie.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that was missing a little bit. And the thing is, if they're gonna bring it up, they should probably follow through on it a little bit. But RoboCop was a fun movie. I mean, I enjoyed it.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Well, let's kind of close out with a little, RoboCop versus Terminator. I won't ask you who you think would win in a fight, but which of the two movies did you prefer, and why ultimately do you like one over the other? Because they, like I said, they are pretty different tonally, even though on the surface they seem similar.
Well, my first reaction is, like, the gut reaction, I would say, like, RoboCop, just because I had more fun watching it by myself. Terminator is obviously, like, a better quality of movie. I guess I'd say probably Terminator is better.
You like Terminator better?
Yeah, just because it is kind of... It's a fun, catch me if you can type of story. Two guys... Well, essentially it's three, but it's, like, one guy chasing the other guy. Good action scenes, good characters. I don't have really a lot of complaints about it, so I guess I would have to say that movie.
Yeah, I prefer Terminator too. I think Terminator...
It's close, though, I think.
Well...
I don't want to say, like...
For me, I really like the Terminator. I thought I just love the very serious tone of the movie. I love the look of the movie. It's such a great story. I tend to like when movies are a little bit stripped down, a little bit more kind of basic and well constructed. And the original Terminator is definitely like that. So I definitely prefer the Terminator.
I kind of feel it's almost like rating a drama against a comedy.
Somewhat,
you know?
Yep.
So
they're trying to
hard. That's why I
compensate.
say it's close. I mean, it's hard. For each what they were attempting, each of them got pretty close to what they wanted to do, I think.
Like I said at the beginning, they are both quintessential sci-fi action movies of the 1980s, so they're definitely worth checking out again. Yeah, and a really fun double feature. Who do you think would win in a fight?
I'm not sure. I gotta say Terminator. So I'm just gonna go Terminator.
I think Terminator I feel like he would shoot Robocop right in the mouth.
Yeah,
none of the guys in that
area.
movie do. His one to shoot him in the mouth.
No,
So
he's
that's
got a
the
weak
area.
spot.
Oh, okay. So that's our take on RoboCop and the Terminator. You guys can let us know which of the movies you prefer,
or who you think would
win in a fight in the comments. And don't forget to like Brain Says Strange Things on Facebook, where we post teasers for upcoming episodes.
I know who would win in a fight.
Yeah?
The audience.
Yes, the audience. Bring on the RoboCop versus Terminator movie, please.
But do the plug.
Yeah. Where was I? You interrupted my plug. Like us on Facebook, Brain Says Strange Things. We post teasers for upcoming episodes and other cool horror-related links. And check us out again soon, because we'll be back with a new video. But that's all for now. So thanks for watching.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.